Uh, okay, good evening all. Thank you very much for coming back. I hope you all are safe with this current situation as well. Um, anyway, it's good that we have this virtual platform in order to learn things that we are having. It is very easy for you to sit and wait at your place, and then you can casually learn. Yet, we are trying to have a very productive time today in order to get the maximum out of the time allocated and value for your money. Right. Now, as far as the day one was concerned, as you are aware, that we are going to explore the new concept of this dice of cost plus profit as appeared within the FIDIC Red Book 2017 version. Right. In the day one, we have in fact discussed about two of them with a little bit of an introduction. And I hope you remember that we were revolving around 18 subclauses appeared within FIDIC Red Book 2017 version. So what is the outcome is at the end of these two sessions, what you're going to achieve is you're going to have a very sound knowledge about this particular phrase called cost plus profit, which appears within every possible location within FIDIC Red Book 2017 version. So today's session, day two, is actually confined to four of them, plus some sort of a benchmarking that we are going to do with another standard form of a contract, which we called as new engineering contract. I hope that most of you are aware of this new engineering contract. New engineering contract has been specifically designed in order for the people to understand the common language, for the people who comprehend the common language to practice it, and then to capture it, and then to get any learning outcomes out of the uh, common language that we are using rather than using the legal jargon. Therefore, mostly people might say that NEC, that is new engineering contract, as opposed to FIDIC form of contract, is sort of a uh, friendly friendly document for us to understand. It's like a easy novel rather than a difficult novel. Anyway, today we are going to start with this dice, the other four sides of the dice. As you remember, during the first day, we were discussing about the delay failure by the employer or the engineer. And then we were talking about the error which is appearing within the standard form of contract, which is being once again caused by the party to the contract, which is the employer, or the contract administrator, which is the engineer. So when we are talking about delay or failure, we are not talking about the contractor's delay or failure, which is obvious that is not a ground for the contractor to ask for a cost plus profit. So if it is not the contractor's fault, and if it is the other party's fault only, that the cost plus profit term appears within the context. Okay. So before moving on to the today's dice phase, I will just refresh your memory about the 18 clauses that we were subclauses that we were talking about. When you peruse this particular uh, table, you understand that there are 18 subclauses. All these 18 subclauses have been subdivided into 6 categories, right? But there are two exceptions. As you can see here, except for subclause 7.4 and subclause 14.1, all the others have got only one face of this particular dice. Now, what is the dice that we were talking about? That is delay failure, that is number one. Then instruction, number two. Error, number three. Act, number four. Suspension, number five. And termination, number six. So this is how the 6 faces of the dice works within these 18 subclauses. But I told you that there are exceptions. As there are exceptional characters within a family, as there are exceptional characters within the world, we find some exceptions here as well. Now, that is one of them is the testing by the contractor. This particular subclause addresses two faces of the dice, as opposed to the other subclauses wherein they address only one face of the dice. So this is the only occasion that you find wherein the two phases of the dice has been referred in one subclause, that is called the testing by the contractor. So we were talking about two phases. The first one is the delay and failure. The second one is the error. And then we are going to start with what is called as termination. This is one of another important thing. What is the other deviation? As you can go, as you go through the table, you will find there is a subclause called 14.1. So what is the significance of this 14.1? That is called the contract price. The contract price, as you are aware, is subjected to changes from time to time, right? However, FIDIC has identified there should be a reference medium, there should be a reference guideline in order to start with, which is called the accepted contract amount. But in our SPD2, standard bidding document 2, we call it as the initial contract price. It is not the accepted contract amount. If you go through the definition, you will find that one. But FIDIC 2017 version as well as FIDIC 1999 version, they are using a term called the accepted contract amount. But the contract price is the accepted contract amount, which is changed by the certain occurrences during the course of the project. So that is the difference between the accepted contract price and the contract price, right? Accepted contract amount and the contract price. Now, under that, under the dice reference, I put it as NA. As you are aware, NA means not applicable. Therefore, when you take these dice spaces, one of the subclauses does not represent any of these dice spaces, but that subclause is of paramount importance in order to identify that cost plus profit element also is included within the contract price when you are doing changes based on variations or claims. Or else, in another context, if you are talking about the NEC, New Engineering Contract context, we call it as a compensation event. Right. Now, this is how this has been formulated. Now, once again, if you see the FIDIC Gradebook 2017 version, you find 26 places. 26 places, the phrase cost plus profit appears within 26 places. So you might be wondering where are the other places that this is appearing. So I can tell you that out of these 18 subclauses, if you take those 18 out, there is a definition for cost plus profit. Within that definition also, the particular phrase has been used 3 times. Okay. And towards the end of the standard form of contract, you will find something called in 2017 version, what is called the contract data. Okay. Now, contract data is a familiar term for Sri Lankan contract administrators because they use in SPD2, standard bidding document 2 also, the same terminology. However, FIDIC 1999 version did not have this particular terminology. They use the terminology called the appendix to tender. So that is a little bit of a difference. Anyway, now we are going to talk about the other 4 phases as per today's agenda. And first and foremost, I need to tell you something which is very important in FIDIC. Now, before moving on to that one, let me just explain you this particular chart, a little bit of a narration, a summary in Sinhala. Then, අපි ගත්තොත් එහෙම cost plus profit කියන phrase එක ගත්තොත් මේ phrase එක FIDIC 2017 version එකේ appear වෙනවා 26 තැනක. ඔයගොල්ලෝ සාමාන්‍යයෙන් text searchable document එකක් ගත්තොත් ඒ text searchable document එක අපි ගොඩක් වෙලාවට මොකක් හරි term එකක් හොයනවා නම් example එකකට විදිහට extension of time හොයනවා නම් අපි මොකද කරන්නේ control F ගහලා අපි හොයනවා key කොතරම් වෙලාවක් මේක repeat වෙනවද කියලා. එතකොට ඔයගොල්ලන්ට මේක තියෙනවා 26 තැනක මේක cost plus profit කියන term එක appear වෙනවා. ඒ appear වෙන 26 තැනින් 18ක් එන්නේ subclauses 18ක. ඊට අමතරව මේකේ definition එකේ තියෙනවා cost plus profit කියන එක 3 පාරක් ඇතුළත් වෙලා තියෙනවා. ඊට අමතරව contract data. ඔයගොල්ලන්ට මතක ඇති මම මේකේ පළවෙනි session එකේදී ඔයගොල්ලන්ට කිව්වා මේ profit කියන element එක quantify කරන්න පටන් ගත්තේ. profit කියන element එක හරියටම recognize කරන්න පටන් ගත්තේ FIDIC 2017 version එක තුලින් තමයි. ඊට කලින් අපි කතා කළේ cost plus reasonable profit කියන එක ගැන විතරයි. නමුත් අපි මෙතනදී අපි කතා කරනවා cost plus profit කියලා define term එකක් ගැන. ඔයගලන්ට මතකත් ඇති මම කතා කරා contract data වල ඒක හරියටම define වෙලා තියෙන්න ඕන කොච්චර percentage එකක්ද කියලා. මේක eliminate කරන්න පුළුවන්. එතකොට මොන හරි doubt එකක් ආවොත් මොකක් හරි ambiguity එකක් ආවොත් අපි variation calculate කරනකොට බැරි වෙලාවත් අපි ඒක define කරලා තිබුණ නැති වුණොත් එතනටත් උත්තරයක් දීලා තියෙනවා FIDIC red book එකෙන්. මොකක්ද ඒ කියන්නේ 105ක් තමයි භාවිත කරන්න පුළුවන් කියලා. ඉතින් දැන් අපි dice එකේ phases දෙකක් ගැන අපි කතා කරා. delay failure කියන phase එක ගැන කතා කරා. ඊට අමතරව error කියන failure ගැන කතා කරා. අපි sub clauses 6ක් ගැන මුලදීම කතා කරා. දැන් ඉතුරු sub clauses 12ක් ගැන අපිට කතා කරන්න තියෙනවා. ඊට අමතරව අපි NEC 3 සහ 4 අතර NEC 4 වලින් කොහොමද මේ cost plus profit කියන element එක මේ කියන events කොහොමද benchmark කරලා තියෙන්නේ කියන එකත් අපි යම්තාක් දුරකට සම්පූර්ණයෙන්ම නෙවෙයි යම්තාක් දුරකට අපි ග්‍රහණය කරගන්න උත්සාහ කරනවා. මෙතන තව වැදගත් දෙයක් කියන්න අවශ්‍ය වෙලා තියෙනවා. මේ sub clauses 18න් එක sub clause එකක් තියෙනවා sub clause 7.4 එක මේ phases දෙකම අයිති වෙන. සාමාන්‍යයෙන් dice එකක් උඩ දාලා අපිට එන outcome එකේ එක phase එකයි අපිට එන්නේ. මේක නිකන් හරියට dice දෙකක් උඩ දැම්මා වගේ. එකක් instruction අනිත් එක delay and failure. ඒ දෙකම අදාළ වෙනවා testing by the contractor කියන sub clause එකට. ඊට අමතරව contract price කියන sub clause එකේදී මේක applicable වෙන්නේ නැහැ dice එකේ මොන phase එකද කියලා. මොකද contract price එක කියලා අපි හැමතිස්සෙම කතා කරන්නේ overall. එතනදී මේ particular context එක ඇතුලේ මේක කියලා තියෙනවා මේ cost plus profit කියන එකත් අදාළ වෙනවා contract price එක determine කරද්දී කියලා. ඒක තමයි උතන අපි සාරාංශය හැටියට කියන්නේ. Then now we have to explore about the notice provisions in FIDIC 2017 version. Now, as you are familiar with FIDIC 1999 version as well as SPD2 version, you may have noticed and you may have experienced when you are giving letters, serving letters, and when you are getting any feedback from the employer or the engineer. So you may be an engineer, you may be an employer, or you may be a contractor. So whatever the role that you are playing, you have to serve notices. Am I right? So when you are serving a notice, sometimes you may wonder whether or not I have to use that particular subclause. Now, for example, if you are giving a notice under extension of time clause, whether you have to give a notice provision, right? What is the subclause which is appearing in this one? So you may have a doubt about that one. Now, until FIDIC 1999 version and even in SPD2, which was issued in 2007, there is no express term within the FIDIC version which states that you need to give a particular clause reference, or else you need to give a notice as a notice. Now, this is very important. Let us read between the lines. This is an extracted portion from subclause 1.3 of FIDIC 2017, which it says if it is a notice. Now see the difference. This particular notice which is appearing here starts with the capital N, wherein what you can see within the last paragraph, that notice is not starting with the capital N. So what is that? That means a notice, a single word, has not been defined within FIDIC 99 version and SPD2 as well. But in FIDIC 2017 version, the word notice, which starts from a capital N, is a defined term. Okay. Then it says, if it is a notice, it shall be identified as a notice. If it is another form of communication, what are the other forms of communications? We will discuss. Now, the number of types of communication that you will be referring to within a FIDIC standard form of contract has been excessively expanded. Okay, you will see that the number of documents, the forms of communication which we refer in FIDIC 1999 version and SPD2 are very limited. It has been ring-fenced to 6 items, which I will explain. But now it has been substantially increased, elevated, and you can see that one within the next paragraph. Now, once again, reading between the lines, if it says, if it is a notice, it shall be identified as a notice. If it is another form of communication, it shall be identified as such. and include reference to the provisions of the contract under which it is issued where appropriate. Now, let us take any of the previous references that we have taken into account. Now, for example, I hope you remember that we were talking about delayed drawings of instruction. It is a failure, isn't it? It is a failure by the employer or the engineer to issue the drawings or instructions on time in order for the contractor to deliver the project on time. Now here it clearly says in the beginning opening paragraph, the contractor shall give notice to the engineer whenever the works are likely to be delayed. So this particular notice is referred to what I am talking about here, which says it shall be identified as a notice. Okay. So normally the ideal way to do that one, when the contractor is serving a notice, the contractor has to say notice for additional cost plus, you can say notice for cost plus profit, notice for additional time. You can use the word notice with a capital N within the letter that you are saying. So if you are rejecting as the engineer, or if you are reviewing as the engineer, once again you have to use the word notice with a capital N. This is what, which is not appearing within the previous versions of PDIC, which needs to be done because the word shall is here. What do you mean by the word shall? That means it is contractually obligatory. The person who is serving a notice has to say that I am noticing you. I am giving a notice to you. Now it says if it is another form of communication, it shall be identified such include reference to the provisions of the contract. Now this is a very, very important thing. Now, for example, in your day-to-day life, when you're working as a quantity surveyor, when you're working as a contract administrator, sometimes you may have to report to certain communications like emails. Okay. Now, for example, the employer's agent or the employer's representative sends the engineer or the engineer's quantity survey. Now, please ask the contractor to furnish a report related to a recent strike which happened in the site. Okay. Now, what privilege or what contractual right does the employer have to ask this from the contractor? Then when the engineer notifies this to the contractor, you have to say, under this particular provision of the contract, please furnish a report pertaining to the particular strike. So this is what I can say. Can you all hear me? Just wanted to do a check from time to time. Prasanna, if you are available, or any of you can say that confirm
Yes.
to me. Excellent, excellent. You can hear. That's fine. Okay. So then once again, now you can see the second paragraph which appears within PDIC 2017 version related to the notice. Now you may have wondered why I am using this particular slide, because all these subclauses that I have mentioned to you, okay, all these subclauses which I have mentioned to you gives ground for the contractor to raise a claim. Am I right? So when you have the ground for the contractor to raise a claim, that needs to be identified as a notice. Okay. Now here it again once again is saying if it is another form of communication, you don't have to in the notice you don't have to mention what is the particular clause. But if it is another form of communication, it shall be identified as such and include the reference to the provisions of the contract. Now, the second paragraph explains what are the other forms of communications, wherein the third paragraph explains the limited number of communication forms of communication which appeared within PDIC 1999 version. Okay. Now let me just read the third paragraph first. I hope that you can see that one. It says, wherever these conditions provide for the giving or issuing of approvals, certificates, consents, determination, notices and requests. See, the word notices are there, but it is not a defined term. This is what is very important that needs to be identified within PDIC 2017 version. Now, the second paragraph, it is a little bit of a fat paragraph, okay, with a lot of resources. You can see there are a lot of elements, there are a lot of items which has not appeared within PDIC 1999 version or SPD2. Let us go through. Wherever these conditions provide the giving of a notice within brackets, including a notice of dissatisfaction. That is also there. We call that particular word as discontentment also. Sometimes you issue a letter of discontentment. But the notice of dissatisfaction, as you can see here, starts from a capital N, and the second word also starts from a D. What does that mean? That means it is also a defined term. Or the issuing, providing, sending, submitting, or transmitting of another type of communication, including, now see, these particular words were not there within FIDIC 99, OSBD2. Acceptance, acknowledgement, very important, right? Sometimes when you are sending an email, if it has not been delivered to the particular person due to some reason, even though it is contained within the contract data, there is a place for the project manager to put insert project manager, or we call him the contractor's representative, and the engineer or the employer to insert a particular email address which is the authorized email address. If there is something goes from that particular email address, that is considered as an official communication. Not everyone can send like that. Now, for example, suppose you have a planning engineer at the site. He has got a Hotmail email account. Let's say his name is Arun. Then he says, Arun, let's say Arun K at hotmail.com or gmail.com. It's not an official communication. But here, the acknowledgement is important. Why I am saying you is, as per the contract data, if the particular official email address initiates an email, but it has not been received, maybe due to the size of the attachments within that particular email, you will get a message saying the email is undeliverable. Okay, or else due to a wrong email ID, or that particular person's inbox is full, it has not been delivered. So from the electronic management system, you can identify whether it has been received or not. So that is very important for acknowledgement. Then advising, agreement, those are not there. Then approval certificate, which are there, you can see the red colored ones are the ones which are appearing. So likewise, what I wanted to highlight here is the notice provisions have been substantially expanded within the FIDIC 2017 version. Right. Now let us go back to that particular chart that we were talking about. So we discussed about the delay failure causes. These subclauses were discussed in depth during the last session. Delayed drawings and instructions, compliance with the laws, right of access to the site. Now let us move on to what we call an instruction. So instruction is also another problem that will happen within this particular. You can see this word instruction is there. If the contractor suffers delay and incurs cost as a result of an instruction under this subclause. So what is the term that has been picked, which is called the instruction? If there is an instruction by the engineer, who can instruct? Can the employer instruct the contractor to do something, some changes? No. The contractor, the employer, even though he gives some instructions when he visits the site, the instruction has to be done by the engineer. Therefore, engineer has to validate what the employer says. Now, for example, in the context of Oman, there are some ministers who may be going to the site to visit things. Maybe the minister does not like the color of a particular room, and he outrightly says, no, I don't like this color, change this color to that color, a different color. But it does not necessarily mean that the contractor has to do as per the contract. Irrespective of the position of the person who is visiting, you have been giving an authority to a particular person, which is called the engineer, who has been authorized by the employer as the official contract administrator who can give an instruction. Therefore, an instruction is normally issued by the engineer. So, what does this cooperation subclause mean? The contractor shall, as stated in the specification or as instructed by the engineer, cooperate with another. Now, there are three parties that we are talking about here. Okay. Now, the contractor has to cooperate. Now, you might have heard that in a lot of official discussions that you are not cooperating. The people are not cooperating. Why aren't you cooperating? So this particular term is essential in order to have a healthy relationship within a site. Okay, that you all understand. Now here it says to cooperate with and allow appropriate opportunities for carrying out work by number one, the employer's personnel. Who are the employer's personnel? That can be a project manager, okay, that can be an auditor, okay, or that can be a project employer's project management team, okay. So the contractor has to give some cooperation. This is what this particular clause says. And then it says any other contractors employed by the employer. Now you can see within this particular phrase, the word C has not been capitalized. So this is not the contractor that we are talking about within the contract. Contractor is a party to the contract. These other contractors are not party to the contract when you are talking about this particular construction contract. Okay, but you have to give access. Now in the Oman context, also there is a, as per standard conditions of contracting Oman, we ask that to give providing opportunities to other contractors. You have to give access to the other contractors. I think clause 31 or something. So like that, the contractor has to cooperate with the other contractors employed by the employer, right? And number three, the personnel of any legally constituted public authorities and private utility companies. Now, when you're talking about personnel of any legally constituted public authorities, for example, the likes of state audit, okay, a state audit forms part of them, right? And then private utility companies such as electricity, power, telephone, something like that. Now, for example, if there is a particular power line which goes through the site, which gives power to another site, okay, whenever there is a breakdown, they should have the authority to come and see. But what is the problem in this particular clause? It says if the contractor suffers delay and no incur cost as a result of an instruction under this subclause to the extent, if any, that cooperation, allowance of opportunities and coordination was unforeseeable. This is a very important term. What do you mean by unforeseeable? As you can see here, unforeseeable is a word which starts from capital U, which is a defined term. As you are aware, any defined term starts with a capital letter. It's like you are giving a name, right? Unforeseeable in the sense not reasonably could have been foreseen by an experienced contractor. This is what the FIDIC definition says about unforeseeable. So if there is anything unforeseeable, now for example, let's say if there is a breakdown in the power, yes, which is understood, which is a unforeseeable thing, right? But there were certain things that the contractor might be aware of, right? For example, the contractor knows that there is a road which is going to be expanded in future. Okay, you can see at the time of you are getting the project, you see that about a kilometer away from the site, you can see the road is going to be expanded. Therefore, you might see that foresee there may be certain changes, there may be certain hindrances that the contractor may encounter in executing his work. So it is not an unforeseeable situation, but there are unforeseeable situations that is having a regard to that stated in the specification, the contractor shall be entitled subject to this particular clause for payment of such cost plus profit. Now this is the magical word that we are talking about. So it says while providing cooperation, if the situation is an unforeseeable situation, the contractor has to provide the contractor has to, if it is an unforeseeable situation, contractor has the right for cost plus profit. Okay, so this is what it says. Right. මම හිතන්නේ මේ කෝපරේෂන් කියන සබ් ක්ලෝස් එක ගැන අපි කතා කරොත් මේ ඩයිස් එකේ තියෙන මේ කෝපරේෂන් කියන සබ් ක්ලෝස් එක ඇතුලේ ගැප් වෙලා තියෙන කාරණය තමයි contractor හැමතිස්සෙම contractor site එක ලබා දුන්නාම ඔයගලන්ට ඔක මතක ඇති මම කලිනුත් ඔක කතා කරා access right of access to the site කියන එක දුන්නාම ඒකෙන් අදහස් කරන්නේ නැහැ ඒක contractor ගේ exclusively usage එකට විතරක් පාවිච්චි කරන එකක් කියලා. මම උදාහරණයක් හැටියට මම ඔයගලන්ට පෙන්නන්නම්. Let us go to that particular site that you will understand. අපි මෙතන ගියොත් එහෙම right of access to the site මෙන්න මේ particular sub clause එක යටතේ තියෙනවා එක තැනක් contractorට exclusively අයිතියක් නැහැ මේ site එකේ සම්පූර්ණ වැඩ ටික තියාගන්න කියලා, right? ඒක තමයි මේ particular මේ access to the site කියන එක තිබුණාට මේ තියෙන මෙන්න මේ particular term එක තමයි මේ කතා කරන්නේ. The right and possession may not be exclusive to the contractor. අපි කියනවනේ අපි exclusive rights සමහර කට්ටියට තියෙනවා කියලා. එතකොට මේක exclusive right එකක් නෙමෙයි. අපි possession of site දුන්නාම ඔන්න ඕක තමයි තේරුම් ගත යුතු ඉතාම වැදගත් දේ. මොකක්ද? අපිට ගෙදරක් rent out කරාම ඕන කෙනෙක් ඒ rent එකේ exclusive අපි ඒ ගෙදර exclusive අයිතිය අපි තියාගන්නවා. අපිට වෙන කෙනෙක්ට ඇවිල්ලා ඒකේ පදිංචි වෙන්න කියලා ඕනට කියන්න බෑ. නමුත් මෙතනදී මේ වගේ express term එකක් තිබ්බහම the right and possession may not be exclusive to the contractor. එකෙන් අදහස් වෙනවා contractor has to give access to the other people employed by the employer or else statutory authorities. Oh, right? ඒ වගේ අයට මේ corporation එක දෙන්න ඕන කියන එක තමයි අදහස් වෙන්නේ. එතකොට මේ වගේ කාරණා තුනක් ගැන අපි කතා කරනවා. එකක් employers personal. ඒක ඉතාම වැදගත් දෙයක්. අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම party to the contract එකක් වුණාම employer කට්ටියට එන්න සිද්ධ වෙනවා site එකට. ඊට අමතරව other contractors employed by the employer අපි මේගොල්ලන්ට කියනවා direct contractors ලා කියලා. ඊට අමතරව personal law legally constituted public authorities. ඒගොල්ලෝ ගැන අපි කතා කරනවා. ඉතින් ඔය ටික ඔක්කොම ගැප් වෙලා ගත්තාම අපිට තේරෙන දේ තමයි මේ cost plus profit කියන දේ contractor claim කරන්න පුළුවන් engineer instruction එකක් issue කරොත් මෙන්න මේ corporation කියන fact එකට අදාළව. ඒ කියන්නේ site එකේ වෙන මොකක් හරි වැඩක් සිද්ධ වෙනවා. ඒ වැඩේ නිසා contractor foresee කරලා තිබිච්ච නැති දෙයක් නිසා contractor additional time එකක් යනවා, additional cost එකක් යනවා. අන්න ඒ එතනදී contractor අයිතිය තියෙනවා cost plus profit කියන එක claim කරන්න හරියට prove කරගන්න පුළුවන් වුණා. Right? Okay. Now let us go back to the next one, which is setting out, which we have discussed previously. In the dice, we have previously discussed about delay failure. There are five places in the sub clauses. You can see first 3 and then the 7.4 and then 11.7. And then we were talking, we discussed about this setting out as well. Now let us go into the next one, which is called the testing by the contractor, which we discussed, but not in terms of the instruction. We discussed this in terms of the delay. Now let us understand how an instruction affects this sort of a delay within this sort of a generation of a claim pertaining to the cost plus profit. Okay. Now, firstly, the testing by the contractor, if you go to this particular clause, it says this sub clause shall apply to all tests specified in the contract other than the test after completion. Now, this test after completion is of very, very important significance when it appears within the FIDIC Yellow Book. Now, there is a specific clause within FIDIC Yellow Book regarding the test after completion. But in the FIDIC Red Book, we do not normally talk about tests after completion because it is mostly inherent to the FIDIC Yellow Book, which is meant for plant and design. But in the FIDIC Red Book, if there are any tests after completion, we can use this one as well, right? Now let us go into the second part of this testing by the contractor. The engineer shall give notice to the contractor of not less than 72 hours. Now there is a time limit which has been set forth within this particular clause. This is very important because the contractor has to prepare. The contractor has to be in line with the requirement. He has to be prepared for this particular testing. That is why it says within for 72 hours he has to give that one. His or her intention to attend the tests. If the engineer does not attend at that time and place stated in the contractor's notice under this subclause, the contractor may proceed with the tests unless otherwise instructed by the engineer. These tests shall then be deemed to have been made in the engineer's presence. If the contractor suffers delay or incur additional cost due to such instruction, okay? එතකොට මේ testing by the contract එකක් සම්බන්ධයෙන් contractor instruction එකක් දීලා තියෙනවා නම් මේ instruction එක නිසා මොකක් හරි contractor ට delay එකක් සිද්ධ වුණා නම් ඒකට අදාළ additional cost plus profit එක they can claim. Okay, this is what the testing by the contractor has to be appeared. Now let us go to the next subclause which is appearing here, which is called the remedial work. Now I told you within this dice we have got 6 sides. So out of these 6 sides, one of them is an act. What we have discussed so far is delay, right? Then we were talking about an instruction, we were talking about an error. Now we are coming to the fourth one, which is called an act. This is an act which has been committed by either the engineer or the employer. Once again, we are going to that one which is called the remedial work. Subclause 7.6, which is appearing this one. Right? So it says, in addition to any previous examination, inspection, measurement or testing, or test certificate or notice of no objection by the engineer at any time before the issue of the taking over certificate, the engineer may instruct the contractor. Now this is an act. Okay, this is the act which the contractor has to do, which is called the repair and remedy. So the repair and remedy, which is off the site, or can be off the site as well, right? So this is how this particular uh, thing appears within that one, right? Just give me a second. Let me 1 minute. Please bear with me for 1 minute. Sorry about that. There was a small disturbance which came. So, right. It says in the remedial work, the repair and remedy is an act which is being committed by either the employer or the engineer, right? So, engineer instructs the contractor to do any repair or remedial action, and then because of that, there is a there is a particular activity which has happened. Now, let me first go through these remedial acts which needs to be done by the contractor, and let us understand to which extent the contractor is going to be responsible for that one, and to which extent which is beyond the contractor's responsibility. Okay. Now it says item A, repair or remedy if necessary of the site, or remove from the site and replace any plant or materials which are not in accordance with the contract. Now, whose fault is that? This cannot be the fault of the engineer. This cannot be the fault of the employer. The sole responsibility lies with the contract, because he is not doing in accordance with the terms and conditions of the contract. Okay. So repair and remedy or remove from the site and replace any plant or materials which are not in accordance with the contract is an instruction which is given by the engineer in order for the contractor to rectify. Number two, it says repair or remedy or remove and re-execute any other work which is not in accordance with the contract. Now we call there is a particular tool, there is a particular document which is being used within the contract administrators, which is called an NCR. What is an NCR? That is a non-conformity report. Okay, a non-conformity report is being issued by the engineer when an executed work is not in line with the requirement. Perhaps there are certain honeycombs within the columns. Perhaps the finishing is not in line with the required standards, or there are some deterioration is the material of the materials which has been used in completing a particular task. So when this sort of repair or remedy happens, the sole responsibility lies within the contractor, because it is not the fault of the engineer or the employer. So one golden rule that you have to keep within your mind is the cost plus profit is possible when the error is not the contractor's, when the error is not a neutral cause as well. That you need to keep your mind. But there are certain exceptions. Now, for example, within the previous subclause, we were talking about unforeseen situations. Okay. So if it is an unforeseen situation, the express term within the FIDIC says it cannot be foreseen by an experienced contractor, but it never mentions about the unforeseeability of the employer. It never mentions about the unforeseeability of the engineer. So those things that you have to take into account when you are thinking about whether or not this particular task falls into the engineer's or employer's fault. But in most of the cases, 99% of the cases, when the engineer or the employer is at fault only, the cost plus profit subclause appears. The cost plus profit um, phrase appears for the contractor to claim, right? And then we go into the carry out any remedial work which is urgently required for the safety of the works. Now, this is very important. Now, when you are talking about the safety of the works, it appears to the safety of the finished works, the completed works as per the contract, right? Now, there may be certain causes wherein the contractor is not the sole person who is responsible for that one. Suppose the column has been designed by the engineer with under reinforcement. Okay, because of this under reinforcement, the column is susceptible to a defect. Then you cannot say remedial work which needs to be done for the safety of the works is the contractor's responsibility. But now item A and B, it is very clear this is pertaining to the workmanship of the contractor. This is pertaining to the fault of the contractor. But item C does not fall into that category. But part of it is yes. Now you have to understand FIDIC 2017 version has been designed in order to execute the works which has been designed by the employer. Okay, therefore the responsibility of the workmanship lies within the contractor, wherein the responsibility of the design lies within the employer as a party to the contract, even though it is the engineer who could be ultimately held responsible. So therefore this item A and B are two different things, and item C falls into a different family. That is being described when you are talking about this particular act. The contractor shall comply with the instruction as soon as practicable and not later than the time specified in the instruction or immediately if urgency is specified under subparagraph C above. Here, in any standard form of a contract, no matter who is the responsible person, if it is detrimental to the safety of the works, if it is detrimental to the safety of the personnel who are working in the site, contractor has to immediately attend these works. Suppose an element of that particular work is not the responsibility of the contractor, but the responsibility of the employer or the engineer. Then, in that case, it says any act by the employer or the employer's personnel, if the contractor suffers delay or incur cost in carrying out such work, the contractor shall be entitled subject to this clause or payment of cost plus profit. It is talking only about the subparagraph C. Okay. This is what I wanted to emphasize within this particular subclause. Therefore, some of the subclauses which is appearing within the dice of cost plus profit is not giving the ground for the contractor to claim for cost plus profit in all occurrences. Okay, this is what you need to understand. Hari. දැන් අපි මේ remedial work කියලා කියන subclause එක යටතේ ගත්තොත් එහෙම මේක කියනවා remedial කියන වචනේ ඇතුළෙම තියෙන්නේ මොකක් හරි වැරද්දක් වුණොත් ඒ වැරද්ද හදන්න ඕන කියන එක. ඒක තමයි අපි මෙතනදී කතා කරන්නේ. ඒතකොට මේ subclause එකේ අපි කාරණා තුනක් ගැන කතා කරනවා. මොකද්ද මෙතන තියෙන්නේ? පළවෙනියටම කතා කරන්නේ plant or materials කියන. ඔයගොල්ලෝ දන්නවා plant or materials කියන එක සමහර වෙලාවට සම්පූර්ණයෙන්ම finished work යටතට ගැලෙන්නේ නැහැ. එතකොට ඒක repair or remedy කරන එක contractorට අයිති වැඩක්. හොඳටම දන්නවා contractor එකේ වැරද්දක් නිසා වෙච්ච දෙයක් තමයි බොහෝ දුරට ඒ විදිහට correct කරන්න වෙන්නේ. නමුත් repair or remedy ඊට අමතරව repair or remedy re-execute any other work which is not in accordance with the contract කියලා කිව්වොත් ඒකිනුත් අදහස් වෙන්නේ අපි NCR කියලා mechanism එකක් භාවිත කරනවා මෙතනදී. අපි NCR කියලා කියන්නේ non conformity report එකක් අපි issue කරාම NCR එකට අනුව contractor correct කරන්න ඕන එයා කරපු වැරදි මොකක් හරි දෙයක් තියෙනවා නම්. එතකොට මේ දෙකම අදාළ වෙන්නේ contractor ගේ workmanship කියන aspect එක යටතේ. නමුත් තුන්වෙනි කාරණාව අපි safety කියන කාරණාව ගැන කතා කරොත් එහෙම මෙතනදී පැහැදිලිවම කියනවා මේ safety කියන එක අදාළ වෙන්නේ site එකට. safety of the works. එතනදී අපි හොඳටම දන්නවා පිරි ක්‍රෙඩ් බුක් එක යටතේ design responsibility එක තියෙන්නේ engineer ට. අපි ඒකට employers design work කියලා කිව්වට design responsibility එක තියෙන්නේ engineer ට. ඒ වුණාට as a party to the contract employer තමයි responsible. එතකොට ඊට අමතරව අපි මෙතන කතා වෙනවා workmanship responsibility එක තියෙන contractor ට. ඒකත් ඉතාලම පැහැදිලිවම ඔයගලන්ට මෙතන බලා ගන්න පුළුවන්. ඒ නිසා මේ item number A and B කියන එකේ sole responsibility එක contractor ගේ නිසා ඒ වගේ වැරද්දක් වුණොත් එහෙම ඒක නිසා යන additional cost එක contractor ට claim කරන්න බෑ. නමුත් item C එකේදී ඒක ගැන තමයි මෙතනදී මේ පැහැදිලිවම කතා කරන්නේ the contractor shall bear the cost of all remedial work required under this subclause except to the extent that any work under subparagraph C above is attributable. Any work under subparagraph C කියලා අදහස් කරන්නේ මෙන්න මේ කියන කතන්දරේ මෙතනදී safety එක අපිට කොයි වෙලාවකවත් compromise කරන්න බෑ. safety එක ensure කරන්නම ඕන. එහෙම ensure කළ යුතු අවස්ථාවලදී අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම contractor ට අපි දෙන්න ඕන opportunity එක cost plus profit එක additional cost plus profit කියන එක claim කරන්න. right? එතකොට අපි මේ විදිහට තමයි ඒක ගැන කතා කරන්නේ. ඊළඟට අපි යනවා remedial work වලින් අමතරව දැන් අපි මේ dice එක අපි උඩ දානවා. ඒ dice එක උඩ දානකොට අපිට එනවා එක එක අංක එනවා. අංක 1 ඉඳලා 6 වෙනකන් එනවා. ඒ එන හැම අංකයක්ම අපි මේ එකින් එකට බලනවා. ඒ බලනකොට තමයි ඔයගොල්ලන්ට මේක පේන්නේ. අපි මේ කතා කරන්නේ මේ dice එකේ එක attribute එකක් ගැන. Now we were talking about an act. An act by the engineer or the employer is the generation for the remedial work pertaining to subclause 7.6. Then let's go to the consequences of employer suspension. Now this is a very, very important subclause that we needed to talk about because employer suspension is not the contractor's fault in certain cases, right? Not all cases, but in certain cases. It says if the contractor suffers delay and or incur cost from complying with an engineer's instruction under subclause 8.9, right? Complying with an engineer's instruction under subclause 8.9. Now you might be thinking why this comes into play even though it is a suspension, because it is an instruction. Okay, now you are complying with an instruction. So in the dice, in one of the phases wherein there is an instruction, this particular subclause falls into that category. Okay, it says if the contractor suffers delay and or incur cost from complying with an engineer's instruction under subclause 8.9, employer suspension. There is a subclause called employer suspension. And O from receiving the work under subclause 8.13, the contractor shall be, and now here this is what we call as a complementary subclauses. Okay, subclause 8.9 says the employer has the right to suspend. Now there are certain subclauses which says that the employer can suspend for convenience as well. There are certain cases as such. We will talk about that. And then from receiving the work under subclause 8.13, resumption of work. After a certain period of time, the contractors, the employer says, right, the contractor, Mr. Contractor, you can now resume the work. Okay. So because of that particular act, that particular instruction which is generated by the employer, committed by the employer, therefore the contractor has now a ground for the cost plus profit. This is what I wanted to tell you. Right? The consequences of contractor's faulty or defected workmanship, any deterioration. Okay, here you can see the contractor shall not be entitled for EOT or payment for any cost if it is the consequences for contractor's faulty or defect. Now I told you that there are certain mixed subclauses. It does not give the exclusive right for the contractor to claim for the additional cost plus profit. The consequences of contractor's faulty or defective workmanship and any deterioration, loss or damage caused by the contractor's failure to protect store are not falling into this particular category. ඒක තමයි මෙතනදී අපි අදහස් කරන්නේ. එතකොට මේ 8.10 කියන subclause එක යටතේ අපිට කතා කරන්න පුළුවන් දේවල් කීපයක් තියෙනවා. මොකක්ද මෙතනදී අපි කතා කරන්නේ? මේ contractor suffer කරනවා නම් මොකක් හරි delay එකක් හෝ additional cost එකක් මේ engineer instruction එකක් නිසා suspend කරන්න හෝ resume කරන්න, right? එතකොට එතනදී contractor මේ මෙතනදී contractor ට eligibility එකක් තියෙනවා cost plus profit කියන එක claim කරන්න. නමුත් මෙන්න මේ අවස්ථා දෙක ඇරෙන්න. මේ අවස්ථා දෙකේදී contractors faulty or defective workmanship එකක් තිබුණොත් ඒක කරන්න බෑ. ඊට පස්සේ any deterioration, loss or damage caused by the contractor, failure to protect, ඒ ඔක්කොම contractor ගේ වැරදි නිසා වෙන්න පුළුවන් දේවල් හැටියට තමයි අපිට සලකන්න පුළුවන්, right? Then we will go into the next part, which is called the suspension. So this suspension and the other suspension is somewhat different because that suspension is based on an act which is purely by the employer or the engineer. This suspension, right, has continued for more than 81. Now it says prolonged suspension, right? This suspension, employer suspension, has continued for more than 84 days. The contractor may give notice. Now this will generate another criteria. This is why I have taken out the termination and suspension as two different phases of the dice, because a prolonged suspension will incur some external factors rather than the contract specific factors. Now, for example, if you are talking of a prolonged suspension, certain materials, certain employers, contractors equipment has to remain within the site idling without being used for another project. So that is the opportunity cost, isn't it? The contractor might have already quoted for another project thinking that means that this particular project will end within a month's time. Okay, but he could not do that one. He has been awarded another project. Now he has to buy another contractor's equipment. Let's say an expensive excavator he has to buy because of that. So prolonged suspension is a bigger spear, a larger spear than just the suspension. That is why it says if the suspension under subclause 8.1 has continued for more than 84 days. Now FIDIC identified certain days, right? Certain days which is important for the contractor. Normally it is about 3 months time that we are talking about. The contractor may give a notice to the engineer requesting permission to proceed, right? If the engineer does not give notice under subclause 8.1, resumption of the work within 28 days after receiving the contractor's notice. Now, the previous one which I was talking about is containing within a certain time frame and it is more project specific. Okay, that is why I put it under an instruction. Here, the prolonged suspension has generated certain losses which is beyond the periphery of the contract, which is beyond the periphery of the project. That is why I discussed it like this. It says agree to a further suspension, in which case the parties may agree the EOT or cost plus profit if the contractor incurs cost, and or payment for suspended plant or materials arising from the total period of suspension. Right? Now, there is one thing which I want to inform here. When you are talking about the cost, we spoke about certain elements which are related to the contract only, right? To keep the work. So, for example, when you are talking about doing some excavation work, okay, now when you are allocating a certain vehicle which a particular plant, there is an opportunity cost associated with that particular plant, right? So that particular plant cost, we call it the contractor's equipment, that cost is directly attributable to that particular work, isn't it? One day this particular work has to be completed by using that particular machinery only, but it is idling for a greater period of time. Therefore that cost also falls into this particular attribute. This is what I wanted to tell you. Then let us go into the next one. Okay, seems there is a little bit of heat here. Let me just switch on my AC and come back. Okay, sorry about that. Right, Now, let us go into the next part. It says taking over parts. Now, this is a very, very important thing. I think you may have heard about the sectional completion and partial completion, isn't it? Now, sectional completion is a defined thing. Okay, it is already defined within the standard form of a contract, whether or not a particular part of a contract. Now, for example, if you are talking about the mixed use development project, okay, uh, you can see that after certain period of time, certain parts of the project can be handed over to the employer. Therein, some of the parts of that particular project has to be handed over after some time. So there are certain activities which are associated with this particular decision, right? Now, suppose in a mixed use development project, some shops that you are going to hand over after a certain period of time. So when the employer takes over that one, he enjoys the privilege of that revenue generation. Therefore, you cannot hold the contractor responsible for certain activities related to that particular building. So when you are issuing a taking over certificate, you know that the defects notification period starts. The clock starts ticking for the contractor to do the defects, because from the contractor's eyes, it is considered finished, done. Okay. Here, the engineer may, at the sole discretion of the employer. Now, this is a very, very dangerous term. Okay. When you're talking about at the sole discretion of the employer, he doesn't have to ask from anyone. Issue a taking over certificate for any part of the permanent works. Okay, so this is little bit of a tricky area. Now, for example, if you are talking about a basement, okay, if you are talking about a 5-story structure, and let's say the employer wants to demolish the existing car park and use the basement as the car park. Now, when it is connected with the other part of the structure, sometimes if a car collides, if a car collides with a in one of the columns, and let's say the structure breaks, now certain elements of this project which has not been handed over is affected when you have that particular thing. So when they are interconnected, okay, it is very, very difficult for us to draw a line, ring fence certain responsibilities related to the partial completion. But that is why the sectional completion is of paramount importance to be defined at the beginning. Therefore, the contractor knows the risk. Contractor knows these risks, then he can price that particular risk. Anyway, the employer shall not use any part of the work other than as a temporary measure, which is either. Now it says, until and unless the engineer issues a taking over certificate, employer should not use the part of the ongoing work, because who will become responsible when you give the access of the site to the contractor? It necessarily means that the contractor takes over these things, right? Therefore, it is very important in this particular taking over by parts subclause, it is indicated that the employer shall not use any part of the work, but he has the right to instruct the engineer to ring fence certain area of the project and give it as a permanent, part of the works. This is what is known as the taking over by parts. Again, it comes if the contractor incurs cost as a result of the employer's taking over and using part. Now, who is active this one? Again, the dice comes into play. This phase of the dice is an act by the employer or the engineer. So the act by the employer or the engineer is taking over and using a part. Okay. So if the contractor incurs cost as a result of the employer's taking over and using a part, the contractor shall be entitled, subject to this clause, to payment of such cost plus profit. Now, for example, if there is any sort of a damage which occurs, which is the resultant of that damage is also attributable to the ongoing work, right? Now, suppose there is a road that has been taken over by the employer, right? That now, because of the improper usage of the employer, a pipe bursts. Okay. Now, because of this pipe bursting, the other parts of the work has been now affected. Therefore, the contract has a right to say, Mr. Engineer, you were the one who asked me to hand over this one. Now I handed over this one and now I am suffering. Therefore, I need the cost plus profit. This is what is known as the taking over by the parts. Then once again, we are moving on, right? There's another act which is called interference with the tests on completion, right? Now I told you tests on completion and tests after completion are two different things. If you have referred to the FIDIC yellow book, plant design and build, you will find a separate subclause for tests after completion, which has clearly been defined. But here in the red book, we are talking only about the tests on completion. So it says if the contractor is prevented for more than 14 days, once again, there is a time limit, either a continuous period or multiple periods, which is more than 14 days, from carrying out tests on completion by the employer's personnel by a causal employee is responsible. Again, it says responsibility, right? Now, when you move into that one, you can say interference with the test on completion is also an act. Okay, it is not an instruction, it is not a delay, it is not a default, something else, but it is an act. So if the contractor suffers delay or incurs cost as a result of being prevented from carrying on tests on completion, contractor shall be entitled for additional cost plus profit. EOT plus cost plus profit is what it says. But EOT, if it is only falling in the critical path only. Okay, it does not say that contractor. That is why it says pursuant to subclause 20.2, claims for payment and EOT. EOT is possible whenever there is a critical path delay, whenever there is a justifiable cause that the overall completion date. Now, this is what is inherent to a FIDIC form of contract, which says that no matter whatever happens within the program, towards the end of the project, if the contractor is able to hand over the project on time, that means he is not penalized. Okay, this is what the FIDIC form of contract says about the program. But however, now there are advanced warning sub clauses which has been given, and therefore the screws have been tightened related to the program monitoring. Now, if you see the program sub clause in the FIDIC, in a different or a future session, I will be doing that one. It has been substantially expanded. Okay, the program provisions within the FIDIC 2017 version is much more stringent than that was within the previous versions. So you cannot just simply say that the contractor slipping within the program does mean that he has been taken off the hook. But it is not the case in the 2017 version, because advance warning provisions is also a contractual obligation, even though there are no sanctions provided here. But in the NEC form of contract, new engineering contract, there are sanctions being provided for not adhering to the advance warning provisions. They don't call it advance warning provision, they call it early warning. Within the NEC version, they call it an early warning. FIDIC terminology calls this an advance warning. So those are some additional knowledge areas that you can cover, right? Then we will go into the next one, which is called right of access after taking over. Now, this particular subclause is also substantially expanded. Okay. Now it says if the contractor incurs additional cost as a result of any unreasonable delay by the employer. Now we were talking about this one previously. I hope that this particular slide has been spoken about. This is a delay clause, subclause. Therefore, we can move on to the next one. Right. Yes. Now you can see this right of access after taking over is a delay or failure. Right, and then the contractor to search. Now this is also a very nice subclause which is appearing within the FIDIC form, which says the contractor shall, if instructed by the engineer, search for the cause for any defect under the direction of the engineer. The contractor shall carry out search on the dates stated in the engineer's instruction or other dates agreed by the engineer, unless the defect is to be remedied as at the cost of the engineer, of the contractor, the contractor shall be entitled for to subject to this one to payment for cost plus profit unless the defect is being remedied at the cost of the contract. What does it mean? It means the engineer may give an instruction for the contractor to search for his own fault or for someone else's fault. Therefore, this particular subclause is different from giving an instruction to proceed with certain changes in the work. Okay, so that instruction and this particular instruction are two different things, because here the engineer is asking the contractor to do something which is beyond his periphery of the work. That is why I classified this under an act. Okay, normally when it comes to an instruction, it has to abide by the specification, the contractual terms, in order to generate the necessity of the works, right? Generate an element for the necessity of the works, and then the number one is the legislation, the legal requirements of the country. Now here, it is an instruction by the engineer for the contractor to search certain things. Maybe there is the enabling works contractor has done some blunder. Now it is not falling within this purview. It is not falling within the work scope of the contractor. Yet the engineer asks the contractor to do something. Okay, so therefore the contractor has to go ahead with that particular item. Therefore it says unless the defect is to be remedied by the cost of the contractor, if it is someone else's fault, the contractor shall be entitled to payment of cost plus profit for the search. Okay, so engineer is asking the contractor for a favor here. Okay, that is why it is called as an act, right? It's not an instruction that we normally call. Then we are going to the contract price. We will talk about it later. Before that, suspension by the contractor, right? Now this is also very important because sometimes now you know that why the water or power is being cut in certain houses when you are not paying, right? Otherwise there is no motivation to pay, let me say like that. Okay, here all the four subclauses here, phrases here, it says engineer fails, employer fails, and then again employer fails. So it is a failure, right? It is a failure by the engineer or the employer for this particular issue. But it is related to the suspension by the contractor. Again, it goes beyond the periphery of the contractual obligations, right? If the engineer fails to certify in accordance with subclause 14.6, issue of IPC. Why it is going beyond the periphery of that one? The contractor may have to pay for the subcontractors. Okay, the contractor may have to fund his head office. But here, if this certification has not been done within the time stipulated, the contractor has a right to suspend, right? Then it says the employer fails to provide reasonable evidence in accordance with subclause 2.4. Now, employers' financial arrangements are not, they are within the Oman standard form of contract, the old one, right? But the 1999 versions is safe. 1987 version also, it is not there. It says employer has to prove that we are capable enough of paying you, Mr. Contractor. Okay, if his bank accounts are not sound, the contractor has a question whether the engineer will, the employer will pay for the works that we have done. So he will be in trouble, right? So the contractor has a right to say, it's like a client going to buy a vehicle, and the client says, okay, I will pay you, right? That is why when you are buying with a down payment, they ask for your salary slips, right? Whether you are having a sufficient income in order to pay for that particular payment, to do that particular payment, whether you are financially sound. This is what it says. Now, if these sort of failures are happening, right, the contractor has the right to suspend, right? Suspension by the contractor. So this is one of the another things that the contractor can claim for the extension of the cost plus profit, right? Sorry, these two slides have been swapped. Anyway, the 16.1, it says if the contractor suffers delay and or incurs cost as a result of suspending work. See, the word suspending is there within that particular clause. Now, the easiest way to identify the dice is those particular words are there within that particular clause. Okay, that is why I put the word suspending here. In accordance with the subclause, the contractor shall be entitled for a EOT or and or payment of cost plus profit. Okay, so this is another thing, right? Then suspension by the contractor is also finished, and then we have to go for the termination by the contractor. Now, this is also a very, very important clause. Termination by the employee is there within Oman standard form, but termination by the contractor, right? Termination by the contractor is a new novel thing, but anyway, fitting 99 onwards it was there. I think 1987 version also has got some indication about that. But termination of the contract under this clause. Now, for example, we were always talking about the contract under a particular clause shall not prejudice any other rights of the contractor. Now, what do you mean by that one? Now, suppose that you are doing a different variation than the normal course of variation. Now, a typical example would be the overhead and profit factor. Suppose at the time of signing the contract, as stipulated within 2017 version, there is no particular agreement between the contractor and the employer about the profit percentage. But the contractor knows that for a particular element of work, he has priced high profit and he can prove that as well. Okay? He said that he put a high profit and he can prove that as well. He has got all the documents intact. Therefore, when issuing that particular variation, the employer says, okay, Mr. Contractor, we agree for your profit percentage of 8% for this particular variation. But at the end of this particular letter, assessed in a different way. This is what you mean by without prejudice. That means this particular act should not cloud the judgment of another act. That is what it says. Okay. So the termination of the contract under this clause shall not prejudice any rights of the contractor. Means contractor has got certain rights. For example, he should be paid. He should be paid for the work he has done. Okay. Now there is a legal principle called quantum merit principle, right? This is appearing in the legal context. Most of the quantity surveys know about that one. Quantum merit principle says in English, as much as he worked. So quantum merit principle actually came up with the notion of uh, letter of intent. Okay, in the FIDIC form we don't have letter of intent. In JCT form we have got something called letter of intent. So a letter of intent says that we intend to enter into a contract with you. The contract has not been formed, but with the goodwill, the contractor starts some work. But all of a sudden, if the employer was unable to sign the contract with the contractor should be paid for the work that he has done. This is called an quantum merit principle. There is a complementary legal jargon which is called another thing called unjust enrichment. Okay, unjust enrichment means if you are not paying for the works which has been done by the contractor for a justifiable and fair amount, he will be unjustly enriched. That means you are acquiring something which is done by someone which you are not paying. Therefore, the contractor has a right to be paid for the work he has done, even though he has been the contract has been terminated. Okay. So it says notice, the contractor shall be entitled to give a notice which shall state that it is given under this subclause to the employer. These are common things, right? But here, in the termination by the contractor, uh, it is also coupled with that suspension. If the suspension, now see, all these three clauses you might have seen in the previous one. Contractor does not receive the reasonable evidence within 42 days after giving notice. Failure to comply, that means the employer's financial arrangements has not been complied. Therefore, after 42 days, the contractor says, no, 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 Mr. Employer, we are not confident enough of your financial capability. Therefore, we should not proceed. So likewise, then again it says, if the engineer fails within 56 days after receiving statement and supporting documents to issue the relevant payment certificate. Again, there's a very stringent provision here. It says the contractor has the right to terminate. The contractor does not receive the amount due to under any payment certificate within 42 days after the expiry of the time stated. Again, it is said the employer fails. All this says it is a failure, right? And then it says all these are related to the termination clause. The important thing is the notice provision is there within the first subclause, and the second subclause is placed unless the employer remedies the matter described in a notice given under subclause this one within 14 days. The contractor may, by giving a second notice to the employer, immediately terminate the contract. He has to give another notice here. This is what it says. If the contractor suffers delay and or incurs cost during above period of 14 days, the contractor shall be entitled subject to this clause, cost plus profit. Okay, it is again not the error of the contractor, but the error of the employer. That is why the contractor's entitlement is there, right? Then we will go into the mother sheet once again in order to identify. Right. Then it says contractor's obligations after termination. This is also a very important thing. The termination can be done either by the contractor or by the employer, right? Isn't it? So it does not mean whenever you are talking about termination, it is not the contractor's termination, just the contractor's wish for termination or the employer's wish for termination. We are talking about both things. Okay. It says after termination of the contract under this particular subclause, the contractor shall promptly cease all further work except for such work as may have been instructed by the engineer for the protection of life or property. Again, the health and safety aspect comes into play. No matter who is responsible for what, the engineer has to do a proper check, a proper audit at the time of termination, and say that, Mr. Contractor, these are the minimum things that you should be doing in order to protect the executed work. Okay, you cannot leave a slab which has been cast yesterday by taking out all the props which has been there, because there's a certain setting time for the concrete to gain its strength. In order to achieve about 60% of the strength, it will take about 7 days. So if you're from an engineering background, you know about from the cube tests and all, right? Oh, I know most of you are knowing about that. So there is no question about that. However, if the contractor incurs cost as a result of carrying out such instructed work, the contractor shall be entitled, subject to this particular clause, to be paid such cost plus profit. If the contractor incurs cost as a result of carrying out such instructed work, again after termination, this is not an instruction which is contained within the contractual terminology. That is why the termination and suspension has been taken as two separate phases of the dice, apart from the normal instruction. That I think you understood, right? Therefore, it is also there. Then the liability for care of the work. This is also an act. Okay, the contractor has got a huge liability for the care of the works that he has done. You know that when a tiling has been done, you have to protect it. When a concrete has been done, the contractor has to do curing in order not to develop any cracks, in order not to be detrimental to the strength gain of the concrete. All these things are there, right? So in this one also it says the cost for which the contractor is liable and the contractor suffers delay and or incur cost from rectifying the loss of damage, the contractor shall subject to this clause is it says any act or default of the employer's personal or employer's other contractors. That is why this liability of the care work of the works is also an act. Okay, there are a lot of acts which will be done: interference, use of occupation, fault, error, defect, right? By employer. See, all these things are talking about the errors within the liability of the care of the works. It is, we will very carefully read this one. A cause for which the contractor is liable and the contractor suffers delay from rectifying this, the contractor shall, subject to this clause, be entitled to proportion. It says proportion of POT plus cost plus profit to the extent that any above events have contributed to such delay of cost. So some of them, the contractor is also responsible. So you have to take a sort of a combined approach in identifying what this is, right? Now, this is what is all about the 18 subclauses. The last one which we are there is the contract price. So you can see the as I have told you, there are 26 occurrences within the FIDIC Tradebook 2017 version where this particular term cost plus profit appears. So one of these places is contained within the subparagraph A, which says including cost plus profit to which the contract is entitled. It is just a mentioning about that one. Okay, for then additions. Sometimes the additions may be done based on cost only. Sometimes the addition may be done based on cost plus profit, right? Based on cost also it is there. So cost plus profit, that you can see this one. So based on that, I can tell you that the all the occurrences of the cost plus profit has now been discussed by us. So we have got a little bit of a time. We will go through another standard form of a contract, which is called NEC 4, right? Now, first and foremost, let us understand the compensation events. There are 21 compensation events in the NEC 4, right? The compensation events in NEC 4 represents all the claimable things as per FIDIC as well as the variations as per FIDIC. So it's like a combined version of claims and variations. There is no specific definition for claims or variations within NEC 4. So they call it compensation. Whatever is changed, whatever is deviating from the contract, they call it a compensation event. So this is why we are trying to benchmark. Actually, the time is limited in order for us to do this particular exercise, but this is as an added value that I am adding into this one. You as I know that you are very much familiar with the FIDIC form of contract. Some of you may have gone through the NEC during your academic studies, but it is of prominent importance that the NEC is emerging in the other areas as well. Now, for example, in UAE, there are certain projects which are done under NEC 4, right? NEC 3, right? And in the other countries, other now the likes of New Zealand, they know about NEC. They are using this kind of thing, right? So the other parts of the Europe also, except now previously it was confined to UK and Ireland. Now some other countries are also adapting to this NEC 4. So it is better to learn another form of contract. Let us break this particular shell which we are confined to as the FIDIC users, because in the in Sri Lankan context also, we are much familiar with FIDIC based contracts. In Oman also it is FIDIC based. Other UAE also mostly FIDIC based. So now we have to break the cell. Now this is the time in order for us to explore the new standard forms of contracts, which may be suitable for certain situations than other situations. I'm not saying that NEC is better than FIDIC at all, right? FIDIC has got a huge history than the NEC. NEC is only uh, started somewhere in 1995, I believe, right? So FIDIC has got a bigger history than that one. So it has undergone a lot of learning curves. So based on that only FIDIC has been formulated. But those are two different ways of looking at a thing. Now, for example, if you take into account this compensation event number 2, it says the client is the equivalent term which is being used within NEC in place of the employer, right? It says the client does not allow access to use of each part of the site by the later of the access date and the date for access shown in the accepted. What is this? Actually, this is the access, providing access to the client, to the contract. So when it has not been done, it is considered as a delay, right? So it is also appearing within the NEC compensation events. Now, for example, the project manager, this is the equivalent for the engineer, gives an instruction to stop or not to start any work or to change the key date. Now, this is also an act of prevention, right? Or an instruction to stop, right? Maybe a suspension, something like that. Anyway, so this terminology, even though the terminology is changed, you can easily correlate the NEC compensation events with this particular FIDIC cost plus profit dice. Okay, so this is a very good exercise for you to do, and I'll be here throughout. You know that after this particular session, you will become part of the alumni. Most of you are already there. become part of the alumni of MCA, that is Mindful Contract Administrator, and you will be, from time to time, you will be getting the insights pertaining to the research area that we are working on. Okay, so that is a good thing. That's what I want to tell you. These NEC compensation events, just study them, try to correlate that with the FIDIC version. So when you are going for a different employment in a country where NEC is being used, you can say, now for example, I told you that FIDIC has got advanced warning system, wherein NEC has got early warning system. Those are two different scenarios. One scenario, but two different wordings, two different terminology, two different approaches. Likewise, it is there. Now, for example, there is another thing which says the project manager or the supervisor. This is also part of like engineer's representative changes a decision which has either previously communicated to the contractor. This is also something like that. Okay, so changes a decision is an act. Okay, changes a decision is an act. Now, for example, again it says the project manager withholds an acceptance of a quotation. Okay, that is also part of an act. Like that, there are certain compensation events that you can see in the NEC 4. Now we have come to the end of the session, and thank you very much for your patience in listening to the particular session that we have done today. uh, I have to tell you once again, when I'm coming to the first slide of this one, right? I must first and foremost thank my classmate as well as my university mate, my friend Prasanna, for giving me this opportunity. The Mindful Contract Administrator, in collaboration with the Training Hub, planning to do a lot of future sessions as well. The most imminent one is that we are going to do a session related to the NRM, RICS New Rules of Measurement number 1. That is appearing the risk aspect, how to manage the risk in cost planning in the NRM1. That we are going to separately address this particular issue with probably with 4 sessions. We will let you know about that very soon, and you all will become the alumni members of Mindful Contract Administrator. And I wanted to tell you one more thing. Now, if you are doing your CPD, now you have already covered about 30% of the CPD requirement of an RICS member or a RICS candidate, because RICS stipulates only 20 hours of CPD. So out of these 20 hours, 10 hours has to be minimum formal. So this particular 2 sessions you can record as formal 3 hours, which is almost covering 1/6 of the requirement. I think about 1/6 of the requirement, not 20%, 30%. So that is good for you, and you will be given a certificate as well for this course that you have followed. And with that, I would like to request if there are any questions that you wanted to ask, and I'm willing to answer. Thank you, Prasanna. Over to you, and then you can answer any ask any questions either by texting or by asking questions. I'll be able to help in answering you.
Thank you, Priyanka. I think now, if anyone in the audience wanted to ask questions, they can open their mics and we can ask.
Hello, good afternoon, Mr. Priyanka.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Yeah, so I have one query regarding this section handover. Actually, if we get the TOC, section TOC from the client, okay, so she said that the DLP period will start from the same day. So suppose if we are giving the initial section, if we are getting the sectional handover at the first time, suppose the next day the DLP period will start. Suppose if we say that 400 days is our DLP period, so after 400 days, so you mean that the DLP period will finish, or any other criteria is there for that?
Yeah, now it's like now you're talking about a sectional completion situation, Farhan. As I have told you before also, TOC means the taking over certificate. I think you're asking about the sectional completion, right? Am I right in understand? Yes. Now, for example, yeah, I'll give you one example. Now, it is if the contract data, now in the FIDIC form of contract, there is something called contract data. In the contract data, it has to be clearly specified. that the sectional completion is appearing for these particular items. I'll give you an example. We are doing a mixed use development project currently. In that one, also that there is a certain portion. For example, the hotel has to be delivered within a certain period of time. After 3 months, the whole of the project has to be submitted. But there should be a clear-cut definition, as you have quite rightly mentioned, because whenever you are issuing a TOC, taking over certificate pertaining to a particular section of the works, there are certain things happening, right? You know, the liability, the insurance passes from the works insurance to the particular client's insurance, property insurance, it will pass into the property insurance. Number two, you are releasing the first half of the retention related to that particular portion of the works, right? And then number three, the defects liability period starts, as you have rightly stated. But if you are talking about the defects liability period of 400 days for the whole of the project, if it is unspecified, in the contract, you have to agree the terms. That is why you need to come into some sort of a supplementary agreement. But if it is specified, yes, I agree with you. When you hand over certain section of the works, the defects liability period for that particular section of the work starts from that particular day onwards. The clock starts ticking from that day onwards. I think you're clear with that, right?
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Right. Any other questions?
Of course, if you have further questions, you can send me an email through Training Hub Asia. I can give you responses. And throughout this sessions and all, definitely once you become an alumni member of MCA, you can ask any question, not an issue at all. Okay, that I have to tell you.
Right, if there's no any other questions, we'll wind up for today. I mean, like now the 2 days sessions will finish, and until we meet up with another collaboration with MCA, Mindful Contract Administrator, I wish you all a good weekend, and also it's not weekend there, right? It's almost
starting
our
work from tomorrow.
That's our weekend, right? And right, okay. Wish you all the best, and please keep in touch with us, either with the MCA or Training Hub. So we'll keep you posted with the future training programs. Thank you, and good night.
Have a good night, all. Okay.